Hello, everybody, and welcome or welcome back to the second shelf and to what will probably, I think, most likely be the last video in which I talk about the books of 2024. Well, more or less, I think. I did already the best dudes of 2024 last Wednesday. And I wanted to wrap up the last year, 2024, before half of January. So today is the 12th, if I'm not mistaken. And this will be my three tops nonfiction, three tops fiction, and three flops, fiction and nonfiction, of the year. I really had a very good reading year. There were books that were fantastic, so it was not easy to choose for me just three in each category, fiction and nonfiction. There were many more. There is this whole middle area where books that are a solid three in Goodreads terms, and there were very few duds or books that really didn't work for me or irked me. Not many. That's also, I think, because I'm way more strict in DNFing books. So I often download a sample for the Kindle. And if after those 20-30 pages, I think, nah, I just don't read it. And I don't count this as a DNF even. So, but there were a few duds. And I'm only talking about books that I actually finished. So no DNF books in the flops, as always. Okay, with this 2.5 minute of community service announcements, we'll get into the books. The three best nonfiction books, no ranking, but the three that really stood out for me. First is a double biography, which is really exceptional, because if you follow my channel for any length of time, you know that most biographies I find really boring, because most biographers can't tell a story. They can just give you dates and names and events, but they are not able to tell you an engaging story. Well, this one is definitely different, and even more so because it's two women, and that is Charlotte Gordon's Romantic Outlaws: The Extraordinary Lives of Mary Wollstonecraft and Her Daughter Mary Shelley. I came across this book and read it in honor of Jennifer Brooks. Most of you will remember her. She was a really wonderful booktuber, with opinionated, but in a good way. And most of you know, she died. It's almost to the day a year ago, on the 3rd of January. Well, almost to the day, it's the 12th, but on the 3rd of January last year. And in honor of her, I picked up this book because this was one of her favorites. And it is absolutely fantastic. The lives of these two women, Mary Shelley, born in 1797. Her mother died after the birth, not immediately, but a couple of days or a week later. And Mary Wollstonecraft was born 1759, so it's the mid 18th century until the first quarter of the 19th century, because Mary Shelley wasn't old either. She died in 1851. She eloped. Mary Shelley is known for Frankenstein, of course. Mary Wollstonecraft for her pamphlet about the women's rights, one of the first pamphlets. And the lives of these two women is just extraordinary. And Charlotte Gordon does a wonderful job of telling the story of these two women's lives. She alternates, this is my marks, one color is for Mary Wollstonecraft, the other for Mary Shelley. And it is sometimes in the beginning, you have to really pay attention because it goes back and forth between those two women, and they're both called Mary. So, but it is a fantastic double biography, and if you are interested in either of these two women, please read this. The next book doesn't come as a surprise because I raved about this book multiple times. It also won the inaugural Women's Prize for Nonfiction, and that is Naomi Klein's Doppelganger, which was published in 2023. Naomi Klein, a Canadian publicist, is that the right word? No, well, she publishes books and she about the environment, but also about feminism. And this book is about, as it says, a trip into the mirror world. The vintage point into this book for Naomi Klein was the fact that she is often, I'm guilty of that as well, she is often confused with Naomi Wolf, whom, if you grew up a feminist in the 1970s, 1980s, you will have read Naomi Wolf's book, Beauty Myth. It was one of the fundamental books for the second wave feminism back then, published in 1990. But she took a U-turn into a Steve Bannon kind of politics, very conspiracy theory-ish. So there is, certainly in this century, in this millennium, not really a reason to confuse the two, except for the same first name. But somehow, I mean, it happens to me as well. So anyway, this was the starting point for Naomi Klein to investigate the trajectory Naomi Wolf took and the world that Naomi Wolf lives in. It's not a book about Naomi Wolf, I want to be clear, but it's like this confusion between the two women and the different trajectories they took, starting maybe more or less on the same side of politics, gives Naomi Klein the possibility to explore the world of the conspiracy theories, the Anon world, the world of Trump, fake news, Steve Bannon, and what that can teach us about our world, our society. I think it's fantastic. You need time to really get into the book, and because some of the paths she takes are new, which is good, but you don't read it fast. I read it twice last year, so yeah, but this is certainly a fantastic nonfiction book that I read last year. Oh, and by the way, I'm just sad that I read Naomi Klein twice, both times last year, but I'm not including rereads in my tops and flops. So books I read 5 years ago and then reread last year, even though they were fabulous, I'm not including. The last nonfiction top is a science book that blew my mind, and that is Kat Bohannon's Eve, How the Female Body Drove 200 Million Years of Human Evolution. So Kat Bohannon is a science writer, and this book obviously is about evolution and science, and it traces evolution from the point of view of Eve, following several topics. Not all the questions can be answered. So, of course, we don't have physical evidence, for instance, about when language developed in hominids. we can guess and we can assume, but we don't know. And so the book is mainly asking questions and offering suggestions, at least for a part of the book. So it's not just giving you evolutional evidence or evolutional theories as we can prove them, but it's part of the book, and what makes it, for me, made it so interesting is that it's asking questions. And from a female perspective, why did we, the human race, develop the way we did as mammals? Why do we have why do we get children the way we do? Why is, those, why do we feed our children with milk? All this type of things that make us specifically mammals and specifically human mammals. She tries to answer if she can, and if not, she makes it clear that she gives suggestions. I think it's fantastic, and it's humorous too, because the subject matter is actually rather dry, of course, but she has a way of being lighthearted, giving humorous. She doesn't make fun all the time, but she has a very light pen to make this subject, this science subject, accessible to us readers who are not scientists. Fantastic book. The three fiction tops. The first is the oldest. I read it last year, but it was published in 2019, and that is Memories of the Future by Siri Hustvedt. This is not maybe that much of a surprise, because Siri Hustvedt is definitely one of my favorite contemporary American writers. And I think she's intelligent. She is witty. She is funny. And she is one of those writers who can write this type of postmodern meta story without being pretentious. We will come to the pretentious part a little bit later. This is a book where an older writer called S.H., Siri Hustvedt, or maybe not, looks back at her younger self when she was just 20. That's over 30 years ago, and first came from Minnesota to New York. And it is about what we remember when we look back, how we experience something when we are actually in that situation 30 years ago. Yeah, it's just so interesting, engaging. I love the language. I love the humor in it. And she tackles serious issues, sexism, misogyny, but also what it means to find yourself as a writer. It was a wonderful experience. I reread this one as well. The next one comes as absolutely no surprise. Again, something that is really, it really is engaging your mind. It's not an easy read, but it's never ever pretentious in the least, and that is Praiseworthy, Sorry for the Glare, by Australian Indigenous writer Alexis Wright. Quite a thick book and a lot of text, so I took it slow. I read this together with Adam, by the way, from Memento Mori, and we took a whole month or something to read it. And it is the fictitious town of Praiseworthy and how Indigenous people live, what they experience. And the people all stand for a bigger idea, but they are not placeholders. They are still individuals. And it's the range of topics and the range of experiences that she tackles in this book about the suffering of indigenous people of Australia, it's absolutely mind-blowing. It's really challenging, like I said. Don't give up if the first 50 pages seem difficult and maybe you don't understand everything. Just go with the flow, read on. It's an absolutely fantastic book, and it rightfully won various prizes last year. The last book is a heartbreaking novel about a Palestinian family, and that is Susan Abulava's book Mornings in Jenin. And I think this was published in 2006, so it's one of the older books on the list. A lot of books on this list were published this year. 2023. So again, this is a family history starting in 1948, the Nakba, when the first invasion of Palestinian land by Israel soldiers took place, and follows a family history up to the present day, not the present day when this book was published, so beginning of the 21st century. It is such an emotionally engaging story without being I don't like it when I feel a book is trying to manipulate me emotionally. Not at all. But it is heartbreaking, and for sure even more if you read it now, because we know what happens after this story ends. It was such a fantastic read, and Susan Abulava, I read more books by her, and she certainly became one of my favorite contemporary writers. Highly recommend. Okay, on to, this is going to be a long video, on to the flops. I have two fiction, one non-fiction. So for the first fiction is a book that it was highly praised, was on the shortlist of the Booker 2023, Study for Obedience by Sarah Bernstein. The premise of the book is an unknown female narrator, unnamed female narrator, gives up her job to live with her older brother who has health issues, and she is taking care of his household. She's not taking care of him. He can work, she's taking care of his household. Yeah, the premise is not my favorite entry into a book, but anyway, then she lives in this remote village with her brother in an unnamed northern country. And it is a parable, the book is a parable on anti-Semitism. The villagers look at her with suspicion, and then, the cats die and the dogs have five-legged puppies, something like that. And she is held responsible for it. What can I say? What I said about praiseworthy, what I said about memories of the future, this book irked me to no end because I felt it was extremely pretentious. And I just don't get on with pretentious books. A lot of people loved it. Maybe you would too. Sorry, that was a text message. But for me, it was just, the pretentiousness, not for me. Sorry about that. Had to cut out the constant beeping of the message. Anyway, the next book is a good example why autofiction just normally or very often doesn't work for me. And that is Francisco by Alison Mills Newman, republished in 2019, I think, but originally published decades ago, but it was out of print. Let me just check, 2023, republished. Alison Mills Newman is an actress, a Black American actress, born 1950 or 1951, and she wrote this book when she was 20. So it was published in the 1970s and then went out of print, and for good reason, I would say. It's about her, Alison, as a young Black woman trying to become an artist, and her relationship with this Black man, Francisco, who became a priest, I think, in the end, and who is just an utter prick. And she is not willing to face the fact. So the book is the internalized misogyny, the adoration for a guy who is clearly not a nice guy, whom she marries and has children with, by the way, later on. Yeah, I mean, again, she wrote this book when she was 20. So don't blame her for that. But there was, for me, absolutely no reason to republish this book. So what was it? New Directions? Yeah, I'm sorry. Not good. Really not good. The last book I don't have anymore because I was so irked by it. that I unhauled it, or yeah, whatever. But I will put a picture up here, and that is a memoir. Let me get the name of the author right. Sophia Sinclair, How to Say Babylon, published in 2023. I read this book for the BookTube prize last year. Again, if you look at Goodreads, praise all over the place. It's about a Caribbean, her Caribbean upbringing with an abusive father, and the mother not really doing much in order to protect her and the other children. She's a poet originally. That doesn't come across at all in the book. The language is flat, uninteresting, but okay. But the story is muddled. There is no self-reflection whatsoever looking back. And it's one of the examples of a memoir that I have to say, the fact that it's true doesn't make it a good book. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry for her that her father was a really nasty person. But in the end, all is fine because we recognize her as an artist, and she's so happy that she can be daddy's girl again. And no, not for me. Lots of praises, like I said. I'm definitely in the minority here, like with the Sarah Bernstein book about obedience. But this, I thought, was really, really bad. Anyway, finally, long video. If you are still here, thank you very much for watching. These were my tops and flops 2024. There were lots of more good books, of course, than only the 6 that I mentioned here. But thank you for watching anyway. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment. I'm always happy to answer your comment, and I'll see you all soon in the next one, next Sunday.